Welcome back, guys. Sliced bread is in the building. We got Justin Gaethje getting the next title shot against the winner of Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira. That then means that Islam Makhachev in turn is facing Beneil Dariush. Very, very interesting fight, by the way. So I'll talk a little bit about that fight first. Makhachev is kind of like Khabib. He's got a very dominant ground game, but his striking's actually better than Khabib's, at least technically anyway. It might not be better for his style. Like, obviously, Khabib had that sort of launch in, he would launch himself into overhand rights, and that would actually help him get inside people. Makhachev doesn't really do that. He's much more of a technical sort of striker. He's very defensively sound, he's very aware, those very technically good shots. And then obviously you've got the technical takedowns are pretty much the same as Khabib's. Is his ground game quite as good? Maybe not. I think his submissions are very good. I don't know if he's got the same system of ground and pound that Khabib does. But nevertheless, I've said before, I said on one of my last videos, I think Makhachev's going to beat everyone in this division. And I'm not moving from that stance. Like, don't get me wrong, Dariush could cause him problems. Dariush is a very legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I actually think this is where Makhachev can probably keep the fight standing, where I believe he's better than Dariush anyway. And I don't think Dariush is going to be able to take Makhachev down. So I don't think, like, this idea that Makhachev's going to take Dariush down and then Dariush is going to somehow submit him off his back, I don't think that's going to happen, because Makhachev doesn't need to take him down. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't need to. He'll just keep it standing and he can beat Dariush by, either points. He might even stop him. He hits quite hard. Does hit quite hard. Maybe he will beat him on the ground, I don't know, but I don't think he needs to go that route. I think he's a good enough striker to just outpoint Dariush quite easily. Right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Gaethje. Justin Gaethje obviously made a lot of improvements to his game. He's beaten Tony Ferguson, he's beaten Michael Chandler relatively recently, but you've got to look at that and kind of think, well, Tony Ferguson was, and I love Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson was evidently on the decline from the point where he beat Donald Cerrone. Like, in that fight, he was taken down by Donald Cerrone. He was able to get straight back up, but you could see that Tony Ferguson was slipping. So I don't really think, like, the idea that Gaethje has finished Ferguson and that was some amazing win. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a very good win. Like, no one else has done that to Tony Ferguson, but he did not beat the best version of Tony Ferguson. He didn't. And Michael Chandler has won one fight in the UFC. He's 1-2 now. And he'd also previously lost 2 fights to Eddie Alvarez, who probably wouldn't be able to compete in this current lightweight division. So I don't know about the legitimacy of Gaethje getting this title shot, and I don't really think he should have done. He's already lost to Poirier it was 3 years ago, so it's a while ago. And obviously Oliveira's the new champ. I'm not saying that Makhachev has got loads and loads of amazing wins, but this is a developing division. A lot of the fighters that were good in this division, Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, Khabib, for a long time those 3 were the best in the division, in the 155 division, or so people were saying. Now those guys are sort of, Khabib's retired and the other 2 are not what they were. Like, Tony Ferguson's on the downslide. Kevin Lee nowhere to be seen. Conor McGregor nowhere to be seen. So I don't see him getting back to a title shot either. So I don't necessarily think Gaethje's wins are as good as everyone's making him out to be. Like, yes, he could still do something against Poirier or Oliveira, but I don't think he deserves a shot more than Makhachev does at this point. The way that Makhachev's just running through people, I think it should be him versus, especially if Poirier wins, but even if Oliveira wins, I think Oliveira is a more compelling fight against Makhachev than any of the fights that you could make with Gaethje, or, Makhachev, even Makhachev versus Dariush. I think Makhachev, Oliveira, and I do think Oliveira will probably beat Poirier. I hate to say it, I like Poirier, but I think Oliveira will win. So I think Makhachev will end up beating Dariush, and it should be Makhachev versus Oliveira, but obviously it's going to be Gaethje versus Oliveira in my opinion. And then Makhachev will have to wait until he gets past Dariush. But I do think he's going to end up beating whoever he comes up against, if I'm honest. But it's just interesting the way the UFC's done that. It's almost like they don't want another Khabib, because there's no guarantee There's no guarantee with Makhachev that you can get a compelling opponent like Conor McGregor who will talk shit about him and then make him famous. And ultimately with Khabib, whilst he's incredible and no one ever beat him, he was pretty much made by Conor McGregor. If Conor McGregor didn't talk shit about him like that, he'd just be another kamaru Usman who's continuously overlooked. Or, you know, how Anderson Silva was until he ended up fighting Chael Sonnen. Like, those guys have been continually overlooked and no one really cares about them, and that's what will happen with Makhachev if he doesn't get some trash talker who ends up fighting against him. So those are my thoughts on that. I think Gaethje could beat Oliveira. I think that's it's an interesting fight in some ways, but I don't ultimately think he deserved it. It should have been Makhachev versus the winner of Oliveira Poirier. And then, I don't know, maybe Gaethje should have fought Dariush. But let me know what you think in the comment section. As always, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and Sliced Bread is out.